Morning everyone, I welcome you to this wonderful tutorial. This is the Kliman. So today we shall be looking at trigonometric equations. I will be able to show you just how to simplify trigonometric equations and also how to be able to find as many values as you can. Now this particular lesson is of challenge to many students, and many students usually get to have challenges in how to find the values of x. And of course, if you are new to this channel, consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and don't forget to share to others. Now, if you want to register for personal tuitions at this academy, HC Learning Academy, just make sure you inbox on this particular number. So it's going to be +26 077 40 46, and I'll be able to respond to you. So now, how do you solve trig equations? How do you simplify them? Now, there are just a few things that I really would want you to know. The first thing is what we are calling as a unit circle. Now, this is how your unit circle is going to look like. So, this is how your unit circle is going to look like. So you are going to have a circle like this. Please, I want you to take note of this. Then you're going to have a line which is going to look like this, and another line which is going to look like this. Then you are going to have two trig functions or trig identities, which I want you to know. The first trig function is simply the cosine. Okay? The first one is going to be the cosine. The second one is going to be the sine. Now, the cosine in this case is going to represent everything in the x. The sine is going to represent everything in the y. Okay? Now, your unit circle is going to start at some point 0, then it is going to go to 90, then it is going to go to 180. So you just keep on adding 90 like that. Then from 180, it is going to go to 270. Then 270 plus 90, it's going to go to 360. Now, at 90 degrees, what are you going to have? At 90 degrees, you are going to have 0, 1, right? Then at 180 degrees, you are going to have -1, 0. Then at 270 degrees, you are going to have 0, -1. Then at 360, you are going to have 1, 0. Now, how does the unit circle work? The unit circle is going to be guiding you the values of cosine and sine when you are dealing with 0 and -1. A very good example is this. Let's say you have been given to find cosine 0. What are the possible values of cosine 0? So remember, I mentioned that cosine represents values in the x. Then sine represents values in the y. So cosine 0, you need to check where 0 is in the x-axis. So at this particular point, 0 is in the x-axis. So since 0 is in the x-axis, what degree are you dealing with? It's a 90 degrees. So the possible values are going to be 90 degrees, comma. We check where 0 is in the x-axis. 0 is in the x-axis at 270 degrees. So you will still get your 270 degrees. Where else? You discover that these are the only possible values. And then this becomes your final answer. Okay? We got to the second one. How about if they said cosine -1? What are the possible values of cosine -1? Okay, what are the possible values of cosine -1? So you will need to check where -1 is in the x-axis. You discover that -1 is in the x-axis at 180 degrees. So at 180 degrees, you have -1 in the x. You discover that it is the only value which is actually present. Okay? The only value which is actually present. So cosine -1 is 180 degrees. Now let's check for sine. How about if you have sine 0? What are the possible values of sine 0? So you are going to check because sine is representing a y value. So you are going to check for 0 in the y. So 0 is in the y here. So this is going to be 180 degrees. Where else is 0 in the y? Even here, 0 is in the y. So this is going to be comma 360 degrees. Okay. Let's try out to see what we are going to get if we are dealing with sine -1. So if we have sine -1, so you are going to check where exactly is -1 in the y. So -1 is in the y at this particular point. So you have a 270 degrees. Where else is -1 in the y? So this is the only possible value of sine -1. Basically, this is how you use your unit circle. So make sure that you get to understand what the unit circle is all about. We proceed. Now, let's understand another segment. The second segment is where I want you to understand trigonometric values for common angles. Okay? So, this is a box that I want you to know. So, let me name it B. Now, this box is actually going to be very simple. So, you're going to have a line, okay? And then you can also have another line, this particular end, and then another line, this particular end, like that, okay? Then this one is going to proceed, and then this one is going to come out like that, like that. Okay, then from there you can have a line drawn in that particular area, then another line drawn in that particular end, like that. Then from there we are going to have, let me see what we can have. Okay, so this is going to be a line like that. This is going to be 1, 2. This is going to be 3. Okay, so this is going to be our sine. Okay, this is going to be a sine. Then of course this is going to be, okay, we're going to have sine here. So this is going to be sine theta. This is going to be cosine theta. This is going to be tan theta. Okay? Now, this is going to be a 30 degrees. This is going to be 45 degrees. And then this is going to be 60 degrees. I want you to take note of what is going to be happening. How do you fit in this table? Simple. Just make sure that you write everything over 2. So I'm going to say over 2, over 2, over 2 in this particular, sorry. Let me just wrap this. It's not supposed to be in here. So this is supposed to be 30, 45 degrees, and this is going to be 60 degrees. Then of course, even here you say over 2, everywhere over 2. Then what you start doing is this. From the start point, you write 1, 2, 3. Then here from the end point, you write 1, 2, 3. Then, because you know the square root of 1, it is simply 1. So you introduce the square root, even here the square root, and the square root, right? Then for the other end, you want to introduce a square root because you know the square root of 1, it is simply 1. Now, how do you fit in for the last end? To fit in for the last end, you simply say the same thing that is on top, which is the square root of 3 over 2. Then here you are going to say 1. Then here you are going to say the root of 3. Now, I'll show you how you'll be able to use this particular box. It's very important. The other thing I want you to know is simply your quadrants. Okay? So if you have a line which is going to look like this, and then you also have another line which is going to look like this. Okay? So this is going to be your 0. This is going to be your 90 degrees. This is going to be your 180 degrees. This is going to be your 270 degrees. This is going to be your 360 degrees. Now, this is going to be your first quadrant. This is going to be your second quadrant. This is going to be your third quadrant. And then this will be your fourth quadrant. Now, in the first quadrant, you know that your sine is positive. Your cosine is also positive. And your tan is also positive. Then you go to the second quadrant. By the way, you remember them this way. So this is going to be AC, A, C, then this is going to be ST. This implies that in here, all of them are positive. But in the second quadrant, only sine is positive. Okay, sine is positive. Tan is going to be negative. Okay, negative rather, not -1, sorry. To just be negative. Then, of course, this is going to be negative. Of course, your cosine is also going to be negative. I don't know why I'm writing -1, but anyway, it's negative. Now, in the third quadrant, tan is positive. Okay? Then sine is simply negative. And of course, your cosine is going to be negative. Okay? Then in here, only cosine is positive. Your tan is negative. And your sine is negative. Now, in this particular in the second quadrant, I want you to know the only possible values are between 180, okay, 180 minus of the theta. Then in the third quadrant, it's going to be 180 plus theta. In the fourth quadrant, it's 360 minus theta. Now, having understood what I have written, you will be able to solve all questions under trigonometric equations. It's going to become very, very simple. Now, the first question that we had is saying we find 2 sine x plus square root of 3 equal to 0. How exactly do we solve such a question? So we shall be using the properties that we have to solve these particular problems. So, of course, A is saying we have 2 sine x. So we have 2 sine x is equal to, this is going to be, okay, sorry. Okay, so 2 sine x plus square root of 3 is equal to 0. How do you solve this question? So to solve this question is actually very simple. You simply say 2 sine x is going to equal to, so we are going to take this guy on the other end so that it becomes negative the square root of 3. From there, we can say over 2. Even here, we can say over 2. Then we cancel, then we're going to have sine x is equal to minus the square root of 3 over 2. Now, let's go to what I gave you. I gave you this box. This box that I gave you, you need to ask yourself, where exactly is sine root of 3 over 2? So, you check in the first box. This is where our sine is. Now, sine is square root of 3 over 2 in this particular box where you have 60 degrees. So, your first value you are going to get for the value for sine x. So, sine x is going to equal to 60 degrees. Okay? 60 degrees as your first value. Now, notice that this guy is negative. So, you need to ask yourself, in which quadrant is sine x negative? So, sine is negative in the third quadrant, right? It is negative in the third quadrant and also in the fourth quadrant. So now, since sine is negative in the second quadrant. In the second quadrant, what you have? The second quadrant, it is simply 180. So in the third quadrant, that's where sine is negative, and also in the fourth quadrant. So it's 180 plus theta. So this is going to be 180 plus 60. What is 180 plus 60? So 180 plus 60 plus 60, you are going to get a 240 degrees. So this is another possible value of x. Then we ask ourselves again, in the third this is supposed to be the third quadrant, because that is where sine is negative. The other quadrant is simply the fourth quadrant. So in the fourth quadrant, it is 360 minus theta. And then this is going to be 360 minus, what is theta? Theta was 60. This is going to be 300 degrees. So what are the possible values of x? The possible values of x for this particular equation are going to be your 60 degrees. Then x is also going to be 240 degrees. X is also going to be 300 degrees. And basically, this is just how you solve this particular question. Okay? And you find your value. Okay? That's how you solve this question. We go to the next question. We'll use the same concept. So let's go to B. Now, B is simply saying tan squared of x is equal to the square root of 3. This one is actually very simple. Look at this, because you know that when you square this particular end, okay, sorry. Sorry. So this is 3. So you square this particular end, you also square this particular end, then you're going to get a tan. Okay, let me check the question first. Okay, good. So now, when you square that particular end, you're going to get tan x is equal to. Now, whenever you're finding a square root, you need to find two possible values. So the two possible values are simply plus or minus root of 3. So we are going to have two equations. The first equation is going to have tan x is equal to square root of 3. The second one, okay, say O is going to have tan x is equal to negative root of 3. Then we shall be able to find both equations. Now the question is, you need to go into your box. Where exactly in tan is square root of 3? So tan is particularly here, and then you have the square root of 3 here. What angle or what degree is that? It is 60 degrees on top. So this implies that for this particular part, tan x is equal to 60 degrees. Now, since this guy is positive, where exactly, in which quadrant is tan positive? So tan is positive in the third quadrant. And in the third quadrant, you have 180 plus theta. So you are going to say, in the third quadrant, okay, this is going to be 180 plus theta. So this is going to be 180 plus 60. Okay, you add your 60, you check. So 180 plus 60, what are you getting? You are getting a 240 degrees. Okay, 240 degrees. Then we go to the next equation. The next one, we know that still we will get tan x equal to 60 degrees. But since it is negative, where exactly is tan negative? Tan is going to be negative in the second quadrant. Now, in the second quadrant, we know that it is 180 minus theta. So we're going to get 180 minus 60. What value are we getting? So 180 minus 60, we're getting a 120. So we're going to get 120 degrees as our first value, in which quadrant also is tan negative. Okay, so in the fourth quadrant. So in the fourth quadrant, it's supposed to be 360 minus theta. So it's going to be 360 minus 60, which is going to give us a 300 degrees. So what are the possible values of x? The possible values of x for this particular equation are going to be, you are going to write your 60 degrees, then you're going to write your 120 degrees, then x can also equal to 240 degrees, and also 300 degrees. So this is going to be your answer for the first question. For the second question. And that is how you solve. Okay? That is how you solve, and that is how you make everything simple. Let's try to solve the third question. Then, of course, the fourth question, I'll give it to you as work. So for the fourth question, we are simply having 2 cosine to the power 2x is equal to cosine x. So how do you solve this particular question? It's actually very simple. So let's name it as C. So we have 2 cosine squared x is equal to cosine x. So the first thing you need to do is simply to collect the like terms. You make an equation. So this is going to be 2 cosine squared x. Then I can take the cosine x on the other end so that it becomes cosine x is equal to 0. Then from there, we can factorize. What is common? You discover that your cosine x is actually common. Then inside you're going to remain with 2 cosine x minus 1. And then this is going to equal 0. So you can actually generate 2 equations. The first equation is your cosine x is equal to 0. The second equation is your 2 cosine x minus 1 is equal to 0. So let's try the first one. Let's find the possible values. So what are the possible values of cosine x is equal to 0? So you will need to go to the unit circle. So you will check on your unit circle. Your unit circle, cosine is equal to 0. Check where is cosine the negative? It is here. Okay? So you need to check where 0 is going to be in the negative axis, because that is what we said cosine is. So 0 is in the x-axis at 90 degrees. It is also in the x-axis at 270. So when cosine is equal to 0, the possible values are your 90 degrees and your 270 degrees. Okay? Then we go to the other one. The other one is simply 2 cosine x minus 1 is equal to some 0. Then this is going to be 2 cosine x is equal to 1. Then you say over 2 over 2. Then you discover that you're going to have cosine x is equal to 1 over 2. Now, which angle degree is cosine 1 over 2? So let's check. Cosine is here. Then you have 1 over 2 here. And the angle on top is simply 60 degrees. So cosine x of 1 over 2 is going to give you your cosine x equal to 60 degrees. Now, because this is positive, so you need to check in which quadrant is cosine positive. So cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant, where you have 360 minus theta. So let's go find that value. So it is in the fourth quadrant that your cosine is positive. And in the fourth quadrant, you have 360. In the fourth quadrant, you have 360 minus theta. So this is going to be 360 minus 60. Then what you're going to have is a 300 degrees. So you have found all possible values. You can now list them. So the possible values of x are going to be 90 degrees, 270 degrees, 60 degrees. I was supposed to put it at the first there, 300 degrees. Okay, that is basically how you solve these particular questions. They're actually very simple to solve, and you get your values. Now, this is the lesson which what is the homework that I'm going to give you, and then you'll be able to submit on a number that I gave you at first. I want you to solve this particular question and see if you would be able to bring out the answers. If you found this video interesting and helpful, consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and don't forget to share to others. Thank you so much.